Greetings, Dr. Mark Winton here from the Department of Criminal Justice at the University of Central Florida in Orlando. And what I'd like to do in this brief video is first welcome you all to the course. This is the course CCJ 6027, Criminal Justice Responses to Terrorism. And I welcome you, and I'll point out a few things regarding the class in this video and just kind of introduce you to the materials that we'll be using. So first I would mention that all the materials that I'll use in the class will be posted on our web course. In addition, we have one textbook, really a wonderful book in my opinion, Inside Terrorism by Bruce Hoffman, the 3rd edition. I read his previous edition and found that wonderful, and his revised edition, of course, updates and builds on his previous edition, or editions, I should say. And so there's a wealth of information in here and ideas from different fields, but also you'll notice it's such a well-researched text. There's just a lot of references in the bibliography. And so, one of the things, if you're reading and you see some things of interest he cites, you can go back and see where that is and then read those and build on that as well in the course. So there's a lot of information out there. I should mention a few things about myself real quick, and I would mention that I've been teaching at UCF for 30 years, the first 10 in the sociology department, the last 20 in criminal justice. Before that, I worked in forensic mental health, and my degrees are a little bit varied. I have a bachelor's in psychology from UCF and a master's in applied sociology from UCF and a master's in counseling from Rollins College, and my doctorate is in sociology from the University of Connecticut. Go Huskies. And go Knights. Okay, and I also wanted to mention that my main focus in teaching and researching is genocide. So I would say that really I spend more of my time studying genocide and writing and researching about genocide than I do about terrorism, but there's some overlap, and I have overlapped that. I also teach a course on serial murder at the undergrad level, and on hate crimes, an undergrad genocide course, and a grad level genocide course. Most of my research and presentations have been on genocide, at least in the last 20 years, and prior to that, a lot on sex crimes. But I've started to look at and compare and contrast, for example, genocide perpetrators and serial murderers. And now I'm interested in looking at genocide perpetrators, serial murderers, and terrorists, and different types, and applying a theory that I use. So I'll tell you right off hand that I use symbolic interactionism from sociology in much of my research that I do. And you'll see that when I post some of my own work or discuss that, post some of my papers, you'll see that, and that's clearly where I work from that, where I work from that perspective. And that's not to say that everyone should work from that perspective, not at all. Actually, there's not a whole lot of symbolic interactionism theory applied to genocides. Probably one of the reasons I was able to get published is that there was a lack of material in that area, and so specifically I use Lonnie Athens' violentization theory. I'll use that to explain genocide perpetrators. I use it to explain serial killers, and I use it to explain terrorists. And so also, I always want you to be critical in thinking about where is Dr. Winton's research flaws? Where are his problems with his research and ideas? And to be critical. I think that's important as well, to be questioning constantly. So the syllabus and assignments are posted online. There's another video you can watch, which is kind of an overall tips to completing your assignments and APA formatting and all that. That's in another video I have linked for you. But I did want to mention a few things. I thought it was interesting if we look at the Bruce Hoffman's book. We look at, well, what has changed between the publications of his second and third edition, and we see, for example, he points out the rise of ISIS, the use of social media for recruitment and planning, foreign volunteer fighters in various countries, an increase in homegrown and lone wolf terrorists, and I would add, of course, an increase in research, an increase in journals and books, and in programs that specialize in terrorism or terrorist studies. We've seen a lot more of that in the last 10, 15 years, certainly. And also, you know, we run into the first problem is how do we define terrorism? And there are multiple definitions, and these definitions change over time as well, which make it even more complex. And Hoffman does an excellent job showing you how different organizations and groups within government agencies in the United States have different definitions of terrorism. I think Hoffman has a nice definition on page 44 to quote Hoffman from his book Inside Terrorism, his 2017 book. Terrorism is, end quote, the deliberate creation and exploitation of fear through violence or the threat of violence in the pursuit of political change, end of quote. So I like that definition, but we do run into problems, just like we do when we're trying to define genocide, and we run into problems, for example, when we use the UN definition, and different researchers use different definitions. So it's the same thing. And then, according to Hoffman, terrorism is more difficult to define today. And that might be due to multiple factors, but certainly there's a lot more going on, perhaps that we didn't have previously, especially related to media and virtual socialization of lone wolf terrorists, things of that nature. And then we can start thinking about terrorist groups, and of course we'll run into some issues. There'll be some overlap. Sometimes we're not sure where do we put this particular group, and so on and so forth. But some of the major categories that we'll see in the course, for example, national separatists, social revolutionary or left-wing, religious-oriented, state-sponsored, lone wolf, single-issue, right-wing, apocalyptic, and what is called gray area phenomena terrorism. And I've left out some as well. And one of the things that I hope is helpful and of interest to everyone in the course is that when you do your assignments, I'm not going to say you must study or write about a specific terrorist or terrorist group. I'm going to give you that choice. And I think that will allow you to pursue your interests in whatever particular groups you want to study. And also, when we read each other's papers, we'll offer diversity of groups and time periods and approaches. And I think that's very beneficial to all of us. I certainly learn a lot from reading the papers. How do you define terrorism? So think about that and the different factors that we use, such as motivation or outcome. Do we focus on individuals or groups or societies? So that's of interest to look at. At some point, we'll focus on terrorist profiling individuals, and also profiling groups. We'll look at suicide terrorism, female terrorists, the socialization process, and we'll do all this, media, online materials, from an interdisciplinary approach, which really seems to be the main focus. In terrorism, it certainly is in genocide studies. And we'll look at some different studies and theories and the application and the data. and we'll look at what's going on now and then try to make predictions for the future as well. And what I find is that I always like to go back and say, well, how does this work within my own field, which is criminal justice, and also from my training, sociology, and also what can I bring in from other fields like psychology or political science and anthropology, just to name a few. And then we have specialized programs that focus on security and emergency management and terrorism studies. And so my goal here is to let you pursue your own interests and take them much further. And so I try to keep the topics open-ended in the sense that you select what you really want to study. And so I do have some set parameters, but a great deal of flexibility. And I think certainly I like writing about things I'm interested in rather than what someone tells me to write about. And so hopefully that works out well for everyone. I was going to keep this short, and I'll make more videos throughout the semester and have links to other videos that I've already made. And sometimes I like to keep videos up that I made 5-10 years ago, especially if I make predictions, to see how terribly inaccurate I was or if I actually predicted correctly. And so it allows me to kind of see some changes. The only negative thing about that is over the 10 years of video, I'll just tell you a brief story. And I was walking one day talking to some people on campus at UCF in Orlando, and this young man, he said, Professor Wynn? And I turned around and said, oh yes. He said, hello, I'm a student in your online undergrad course. I said, oh, nice to meet you. And we start talking, and he's like, yeah, I didn't recognize you, but your voice. I said, oh, you didn't recognize me? He said, oh, I've been watching the videos. And you know what he was, he's very polite about it, but yeah, I've aged considerably in the last 5 or 10 years. And but the voice stayed the same, and he enjoyed the class. He was getting a lot out of it, so it was great to hear that. So I was pleased about that. I'm fine aging. There's really not much I can do about that. I kind of got a laugh out of that, and so did the people I was with. That it's bad when the information is accurate at the time, and we can see how that's changed. But certainly, the videos are. Some of them are old, some are new. Like this one I'm making 3 days before the class opens up. And sometimes I'll add some more material. I guess my point is, wow, I spent 3 minutes trying to make a point and never even got to it. And that is that it's extremely important to look at the history of terrorism and to understand how we got to where we are today. If we only look back a couple years, I think we're going to be completely lost. So history, another discipline, wealth of information, the history of terrorism. I probably left out some areas, and I apologize for that, but everything that works we can use. So welcome to the class. Thank you.